Welcome to the Brand Scientist podcast. I'm your host, Rob Russ, joined by my co-founder, Grant Tom, today. And we've got Tim Beanland from Bean Filming on the show today. And Tim is down in Victoria, and Bean Filming supplies a comprehensive range of video content marketing services, including promotional videos, explainer videos, video sales letters, testimonial videos, and a whole bunch more. And Tim's here today to share the story of his business and to tell us a little bit more about how he works with a variety of different brands and how he's built his brand. Tim, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, mate.
Thank you. It's an absolute privilege. I've been admiring what you guys have been doing for a while, and Grant's told me a lot about it. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Good day, Grant. How are you, mate?
I'm extremely well. Good to see you, Tim. I know you've been traveling overseas, so once again, I'm sure you've come back with a world of knowledge. I've known Tim a fair while, and we've done a couple of projects together, but at the same time, I love Tim's passion and dedication to his craft, and I think he's going to be a fantastic guest on our show.
All right, fantastic. Well, I want to get into today's show. I want to sort of start out at the middle of the story, if I may. You've got a great website there. I had a good look at that, and I've had a look at the products and the services that you offer. And one of the things that struck me about that, if I step outside of what you do for a living in that, it's all about brand. So getting on video and getting yourself in front of a camera and telling the story, that is all about brand. And so when Grant mentioned to me that you were going to come on the show, I was really excited to do that because what you do is at the heart of what we do as well. Can you talk about that a little bit and how you help businesses grow their brands and grow their online presence?
I think the best way to describe it, especially from a brand context, is to tell a story of a mutual connection of Grant and I, Johan. Johan was my very first customer. He saw the value in what I did and said I needed to build a business around it. But it took 5 years for him to reorder from me, to repurchase. And this happened on the Gold Coast fairly recently. And before the start of the day, I sort of took Johan aside and I said, you've seen my journey, you've seen me grow the product that I'm offering. Why was it now that you decided to re-engage for services? You've seen the improvement, you've seen everything. And he looked at me and he said, Tim, I lost $1.2 billion. And Johan's the type of business owner, Grant, you know him. If he says that type of claim, he's not joking around. And of course, I asked the question, what do you mean? And he said, well, I've done a lot in business. I've built and sold businesses. I've done so much in my career. But he was overlooked for a keynote speech. I believe he was even sponsoring. I need to double check the fact. I believe he was even sponsoring the event. And he was overlooked, and every single person in that crowd for that keynote speech, there's about 1,200 attendees, all of them were his ideal client. And I said, okay, so why were you overlooked? And Johan looked at me and said, it's because I didn't have the brand that the other people had. I didn't have the content that the other people were putting out there. I was overlooked. When someone went to my profile, they saw the family man, they saw what he put out on social media, they didn't see the business. And the worst thing for him as well was the people that were on that stage were not as good, in his eyes, not as good as him, and offering inferior products, inferior services, and essentially were charlatans, some of them. I don't know the names, but that was the wording. And Johan said to me, he said, we missed that opportunity because all three of us business owners, we didn't have the exposure in the brand and we weren't putting out the content. So for him to hire me at the level that he did was a drop in the ocean in terms of the missed opportunity. So when it comes to what I do for people, when opportunity knocks, when that keynote speech opportunity knocks of 1,200 ideal customers, when someone's looking for you, when they go back and look at your profile, what is the perception that person gets? Are they seeing valuable content and valuable ideas from you, or are they seeing the stock standard, here's a blog post I shared? Or so that, and that happened almost a month ago to this date is when that scenario happened, and it really it gave me motivation around what I do. If someone like Johan He'd be a great guest, by the way. So maybe another one. That for him to look at me in the eye and say, I didn't have the brand. I was overlooked for this keynote opportunity with 1,200 of my ideal customers because I wasn't putting out content. That really motivated me around what I do. Yeah.
I think one of the things that you mentioned there, Tim, is the fact that there are three types of brands that people have to concentrate on. You've got business brands, you've got product brands, and you've got personal brands, type of stuff. So personal brands, company brands, product brands. And when it comes to personal brands, in many ways it's the hardest because many people have many dimensions to their personality. But it's about being on that consistent factor of being able to get your key message across, not in lengthy ways, but in short ways, in the sense of short messages. So I think that the service that you offer and the people that you attend to are extremely valuable in the sense of that presence, like Johann's story, with the view of just being noticed for the value rather than just known as a family man.
I can't be the only one who has seen someone on a stage or in an ad and gone, my product or service is better than that. Why them? Why are they the one that people choose to spend their money with? I can't be the only one that has had that experience. And when you look into it, why does someone purchase from that person? Well, it's because they've seen 5 images, 2 videos, 5 short form videos, and then maybe a blog post that they've written. You're taught in your first year of marketing about touch points, and what we can do with video, especially in that short form that you touched on, we can create multiple touch points every single day quite easily if you know what you're doing. And I think that's the opportunity. It's exciting at the moment for sure.
Yeah, I really like it. There's no reason not to be using short form content, particularly short form video content. And as the tools evolve in TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and whatever platform you're deciding to use, LinkedIn even, then that can be a really great way to get your brand in front of people. We had a guest on last week, Tim. Her name was Amy. She was a LinkedIn expert, and she's one of those people that help you grow your LinkedIn account and how to represent yourself properly. And one of the things that she talked about branding yourself on LinkedIn was that only 4% of people on LinkedIn are actually sharing content. So if your target market was in that location for the products and services that you had, you're really being able to set yourself apart quickly by putting content out on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But the tricky part is to aggregate content at scale, because you want to be able to do this something as a one and done, and I've got this done for the next couple of weeks or next few months, or I want to develop a habit where I'm doing that on a daily basis. I've found my voice and I'm able to communicate my brand value and what it is that I do to my audience. Tell us a little bit about how you help people create a large amount of content in a short amount of time.
Yeah. So there's 2 ways that I create content for people at scale. The first is by structuring a conversation that puts them up on a platform, talking the best about their business. So I discovered very early on when I was creating content that doing it the old school way, coming up with a script, reading out that script. One of my first clients prior to Johann was a mortgage broker. He would spend hours with this script, and then I'd come over to his house and we'd probably have 10 videos that he wanted to rack off. And 2 hours later, stumbling over his lines, forgetting everything, getting nervous. We probably only shot 1 video, and then by the time he edited it down, it was barely usable. And then what happened was I said, okay, Prashant was his name. You have done sales training to me, and I've been in absolute awe, and there's been no camera there. So what would happen if I just chuck the camera off to the side? Let's just have a conversation about what you do. And if you're an expert at what you do, you can probably talk about your expert topic for 30, 45 minutes when someone's prompting you with the right questions. So that's the first way. The first way is I structure an interview that is based around things that a customer wants to listen to, problems, objections, myths, questions that people ask them on a daily basis. And then I just keep it very conversational, like what we're doing today, but just with a little bit more of a structure. Through that process, I then go away and then I watch through that interview and find the best bits. And often I find anywhere from 30 to 60 clips from one conversation. The record that I found 109 bits of content for someone in an afternoon of creation. And that was Johan a month ago. I found 109 bits of content for them in that delivery style. So that's the first way is we do a bit of pre-production and planning around what your customer wants to listen to, because anyone can create a video. We can sit here and create videos like that, but the battle is won and lost in a video that the customer actually wants to listen to. So that's where a little bit of planning and pre-production goes in. The other way that I help people create content is what Grant and I has called Osmo, which is outside of the office. I'm doing it right now, actually, where we as professionals go into sales meetings, we go into coaching calls, we do podcasts, and let's take a failed sales call, for example. You've given advice to this person that would be incredibly valuable if you're doing sales in the right way, if you're consulting and giving tips. Now, if that sale doesn't go through, you've just spent 30 minutes saying some really valuable stuff to an empty Zoom room. Now, what I teach people to do is we chuck a camera off to the side, we put a microphone on you, like I've got one here, and we record that. We record just you. And it's amazing how many valuable bits of information that you give on a daily basis in your meetings that could be applicable to everybody else. And that instantly you're using your time twice. There's a bit of effort there, and you got to go through the content, you got to find it all. You might have one meeting where you don't even say anything, and that's okay. But the biggest leverage of your time is to use your time twice. And that's the second way that I teach people to create content. And you forget that the camera's there. I've forgotten that it's there if I didn't say that I was doing it. But those are the two ways. Yeah.
But I think, Rob, what we must really get across here, I think this is the biggest secret of all to get out of this particular podcast, is the fact that Osmo, which stands for Outside My Office, is the missed opportunity that most business owners are missing right now and have been for the last 24 months, and will be the most valuable tool for the next 24 months. If you're trying to build a brand, and like Tim has just mentioned, you sit in meetings giving some valuable information. You don't need to give confidential information, but sometimes there's supporting communication that just upholds a strategy or a theory. Just those little snippets of information are diamonds that you can literally use in your social media campaign. Be it that you splice them up, or be it that you use them as shorts, or whatever the case may be. But I think that the big misconception here is that business owners tend to have their web guy, their social media guy at the end of the passage, downstairs in the basement, or in the building across the other end of town. I think what's got to happen about Osmo is you've got to get that person to sit right outside your office. He's got to be recording all the time. He's got to be grabbing all the time. He's got to be splicing all the time, because that is where the diamonds are, that you can be sitting with the view of unlocking communication. Like Tim has just mentioned now, he grabbed 109 cuts of valuable information just from a camera just being in the room. And I think that all business owners listening to this podcast need to pay attention to the fact that Osmo is a secret that needs to come forward and be utilized by most business owners to build their brand and make their content more relevant and valuable, because the people viewing the content want people to be authentic.
It's so funny because we see the sort of titans of the content creation industry, the Alex Hormozies, the Gary Vaynerchuks, the Kerwin Rays, these people, and they have YouTube shows that is literally someone following them around every day. But that's not scalable for everybody. But the funny thing is, and everybody goes, "Oh, I can't create content until I find my camera person." Well, no, you can become the camera person. It's I might be a little bit biased by saying it's easy to set up a tripod and a microphone, and I've got a little bit of industry experience. But once you've got it set up, it's there. So you could have someone like me come and set you up. I've helped Grant. We actually implemented this a while ago. We just couldn't figure out Dropbox for a little bit, but that's okay. We'll figure out a better delivery method. That's on the drawing board. But don't wait for I might be shooting myself in the foot, but don't wait for a camera person to create content. You can put a camera off to the side in your meetings, and you'll be amazed by the stuff that you do. Even if you don't do it, even if next time you're just aware of the next meeting that you go into and the value that you're providing,
Cool.
Just be aware of that. That's that would be the biggest advice. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. I think one of the things that is another missed opportunity, and Grant and I talk about this all the time, working on your brand should be the number 2 thing that you're doing on a daily basis in your business. And when you're talking about content creation, you're the video guy over there in Melbourne. I'm going to replace that with brand creation. And the reason I say that is because every time you put out a piece of content, you can insert the word brand there as well. You're putting out a piece of your brand. So how do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be represented? And if I just circle back to something that you mentioned about one of the first things that you learn in marketing school when you go to university, or even when you watch an online video on YouTube, is they tell you about touch points. And if you're a data guy like me and you look at analytics, you'll see that touch points will be in the vicinity of 5 to 7, sometimes as many as 10 to 15 times that person's visited your website before they've made a purchase. They're looking around, they're going back and forth, they're comparing you, they're looking at reviews. There's a whole range of things that they're doing. And the only way that you can increase the opportunity for you to get more touch points is to put out more content. And that's how you establish your brand. So what is it that you're standing for? Why are you doing that? What's happening and how's that going on? So my question to you, Tim, is this. I noticed on your website, you've got a fella on there. He's an ex-Navy SEAL named William Branham. And William has got this really cool brand. You'll like this, Grant. I don't think I've ever mentioned this to you before. It's called the Naked Warrior. So William was in the SEALs for 25 years, and he had a hard time sleeping. And he discovered CBD oil and to help him sleep. And there's a whole range of things that all of that is available to do. He's American, of course, and all of that stuff is legal in the US. It's not legal here in Australia for whatever reason, but you can get it. But you just need prescriptions for it and whatnot.
Yeah.
But around his branding, it's always really cool. At the end of his emails, he always says, "Get naked." And I did a podcast with him, and he's like, "Don't forget to get naked." And he's wearing a shirt that says "Get naked," and it's a little bit kind of cheeky and polarizing. And like, he's the dude that keeps telling me to get my gear off. Like, what the hell? That's like a kind of a funny brand. So Tim, you come across things like this from time to time, where you have these really cheeky brands and they're working like that. That must be kind of exciting. I'd just love to get your comment and your feedback on that and how you leverage that.
Yeah, what I love specifically about Williams is that naked is an acronym. It's never quit, accept your failures, kill mediocrity, embrace your fear, and the
D is something else.
The D is something
Navy
else.
SEAL thing.
Sorry, William. I've forgotten the D.
We'll get there.
I'll get there. But he's taken something that someone could read and even get offended by in a sense, but it creates a talking point.
It's gently polarizing, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's gently polarizing. I like it, and that's a really way to put it. But he's very smart in doing that because now we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to your brand, how do you become memorable? How do you become top of mind position? That's everything that you do from a branding perspective has to have that in mind.
Yeah, but there's three things, right? So there's consistency, there's repetition, and there's message. And the message is the one that really has got to be like effective, and that's the disruptive part. But the repetition and the consistency has always been there and always been the same, I think is important. It's the message that really is like the cement between the bricks.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Tim. You were going to finish that thought there?
The other thing I think which is important is something that I do is when someone new connects with me, I actually go onto my profile and I flick through it a little bit. And the question that I try to ask myself is, if I was somebody looking for what I do, would I purchase off me or would I reach out based off this profile? And if you go back and look at your profile and you scroll through it, and if the answer to that is no, well, then I think you need to start looking at your brand a bit differently and what you're posting. That for me is the biggest. if you'd ask me the biggest branding exercise that I do in my business, that would be the test that I do. And I almost do it, just that if someone connects with me on LinkedIn, I kind of do it on a maybe a fortnightly basis. I'll go, okay, is someone going to actually enjoy landing on this page, and what is the message that I'm putting out? Those would be that's sort of the test there. Yeah.
A lot of people are self-conscious, but I think you're quite right by just sort of reviewing what you've done and would you buy from yourself. And I say that often to business owners when I'm in workshops is, would you call yourself? Would you call your own business? Not like go through your internal number. Call the number that your customers call. And would you buy from the way that your staff answer the phone? And exactly the same way, if you had to look at your profile, would you really find validity in what you're communicating? And if not, what is it that you can change in the message? Because the repetition and the consistency is a secret recipe, but it is the message ultimately. So would you buy from yourself? I think very good tip there, Tim.
Yeah, well said, gents. I would say that in that self-conscious part, when William tells me to get naked, for some reason, I'm really like super self-conscious. Like, no, dude, not in front of you.
I think it's more you guys don't have any shorts on. I think you've got a top on, but you don't have any shorts on.
Yeah.
And when the Navy SEAL says it to you as well, he's like ripped. He's like a unit, right? I'm like, come on, man. Like, you're 50 years old and you look like that. How does that happen? That's funny.
It's a fantastic acronym. Acronym.
Yeah, I was actually with William. That was part of the reason why I was in LA. He was speaking at the event that I went to. So it was good to meet him in person. I'd done a bit of work with him online, but yeah, it was great to meet the guy face to face. Yeah.
Very nice. All right, Jen. So I want to move on to your name and how you've branded yourself there, Tim. So Tim Beanland, Beanland is your surname, and you've got Bean Filming. That's what you've put it in there. It's very clever. It's a very clever play on words. You have to be very, very super ultra careful with a play on words, folks. Let me tell you a little anecdote from my side. So my partner is a wedding photographer. She's been doing that for a long time. We would tell the story. She's been doing it such a long time. She can remember when you had to go on the camera and kind of wind the film in there, right? And you had to learn to be a good photographer because it was expensive every time you press that button because you got to develop the things, right? So she's from back in the day. She saw the transition into digital and whatnot. And when I first met her, it was like, why don't we get you out of these businesses that you're working for and start your own one? Well, what are we going to call this? And her name is Susan White. She's listening to me over there in the corner, kind of smirking about this story. And it's like, well, what are we going to call this wedding photography business? And me and my bright idea says White Wedding Photographers. Yeah, makes sense, right? You kind of know. Go, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's a nice name. But let me tell you, whatever you do, don't call something White Wedding Photographers. You know how many times I've written that and how long that is with 3 words in there, and then the URL is this long, and people WEDD. Oh my God, like it's like so stressful. So maybe not inserting your name is necessarily a good idea. You've got a nice short name there, Bean Filming. Were you tossing up to use your name there, or is that something that just kind of came out one day and you went, oh, I'm just going to call it my name?
Yeah, so the last name being Beanland, I've had everything phone book growing up: Beanstalk, Jack and the Beanstalk. Every bean pun under the sun has been used. Yeah, bean. I'm glad I didn't go into accounting. Yeah, it would have been that would have been. I was studying accounting for a little bit, so that would have been interesting. But Bean Filming actually was a recent rebrand. How I started this business was actually through a podcast, and that podcast was, at least at the start, it was called Bean Talking, and then I had the phrase "ask me who I've been talking with." I've been talking with this one, so it sort of came out of that, and then when I decided to do a rebrand at the start of this year, there's a bit of a thing going around where it's SEO positive to kind of have what you do in the name of your URL. So you guys, brand scientist, brand is in the name. Filming, people. That's what I do. So I was always going to keep that tie to the pun of the last name, and then it just there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes off the back of it. Who have you been filming with, or we've been filming. So that's it was just a natural progression, I guess, out of my whole life being sort of having been puns in it. That's where I moved the business to as well. Yeah.
So let me come in a little bit. So here's the positive and the negative, right? So
Yeah.
one of the most hardest businesses to sell is a business that has your personal name attached. Because one day when you want to exit and you're coming along and you want to buy this company, but that person is no longer in the business, extremely, extremely hard to now take over that role and say, well, I'm looking for the name of the guy and he's no longer here. And it just has a very bad connotation. So a lot of people get very proud and brand proud and personal proud about building this brand around their name and getting recognized for their reputation. But to exit it or to sell it to someone else is extremely hard. But in Tim's case, where he's been using it in the sense of what he's doing, I think there's a great play. And I think there is many, many things that Tim can utilize being in so many contexts with the view to get multiple amplification in the sense of who he talks to and what he does. I think is a very smart move. So I think you've done extremely well with that little play, with including your name, with not being 100% your name. And therefore, you've got yourself multiple leverage opportunities to really expand this and be recognized for the value that you bring.
Yeah, and there's, a friend of mine has joked, he's like, you should start bean mowing and bean cleaning and I've been doing all this stuff. So there is an element of transferability onto it, and I like the semantics of you've been doing something. So you've been filming, you've been mowing, you've been
into
marketing.
the USA.
Exactly. So thank you. It is that was a concern, that sort of when exiting and selling, but I think it's also removed. It's removed enough away from them. So that was actually a concern when I was thinking about it, but I just sort of took the leap and said, no, it's far enough away. The actual sort of action of the word means the most about it. Yeah.
I think, Tim, you can run multiple platforms here. You can have Bean for a beer, and then you can just do a whole lot of craft beer series.
Exactly.
Been to the beach and just go to a whole lot of beaches, and then been to the supermarket and and you can have all these multiple channels just running, and you could just kill it.
It's funny, but it's actually I wouldn't mind giving it a go. I'll get Bean filming up and scale me out of it, and then we'll start something else. Yeah.
Love it. It's good stuff. I love the idea of the name there and how you've inserted something in there. One thing that Grant was really clever with when he came up with the name Brand Scientist, and here's a bit of kudos to you as well, Grant, is it actually means something. And I find myself as a data guy, as an analytics guy, someone that's playing with AI all day long, I find myself taking a very scientific approach to what it is that I do. And the name just kind of fits perfectly for the way that I behave as a technical person on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's really important. There's a lot to be said for what the name of a business actually is, to what that represents externally facing the consumers and the customers, but also how that makes the employees feel and how the people feel about that brand. I love the name Brand Scientist because those two words generally don't go together in the English language. The first time you've probably said those words together in a line where you've said brand and scientist together are when you've encountered Grant or I or some of our content. That's actually where it comes from. And it's kind of, it stops you in your tracks. Like, what is that? I know that branding is, kind of science, but Grant says that, it's like part art, but 100% science all of the time. And I know that when I'm building AI tools and I'm mucking around with all of that development stuff and just building stuff, you have to take a very analytical and data-driven approach to it, which is a scientific approach. It's another way of saying that. So internally, for me, somebody who's working this on a daily basis, that means a lot. And I think if you're listening to this or watching this, then you kind of need to think about how your brand makes your staff actually feel. Does it mean something to them? Does it apply to the mission, the vision, the values, and all of those things that, those regular things that you talk about that you do once at the start of a business and then put in the bottom drawer, but do you ever revisit those things to help you to grow your business? All right, I want to move on from those little points.
On that point, when you're looking at a strategy, right, that's where the science really comes into play. And I sort of utilize the 35 years of experience of building 4,000 accounts and taking 4,000 brands to market. But basically, when you're making a cake, you're using different ingredients, and sometimes depending on what kind of outcome you really want, you up some ingredients and lessen others. But basically, the formula is very much the same. So when it comes to building a business and building your brand and having that exposure and recognized, because ultimately a brand is not a logo, a brand is how people perceive your business to be. Then basically that formula is then being utilized in the sense of repetition, consistency, and quality of message is where it comes in. So sometimes when you've got a good message, you can amplify that 100 times. When you've got a dead message, you're just going to put it out maybe 5 to 10 times and you're going to let it go to sleep because it just didn't have the impact that you want. So scientific is always part of the data because you want to be able to measure, because if you can measure, you can manage. But at the same time, you always got to implement. And so therefore, the number of times you do things scientifically is where ultimately all of the stuff that Tim puts together as content, what we do together is helping businesses to not leave money on the table. Those are the kind of things that I think are key in making sure that businesses have success early and consistently till the time that they want to either exit or merge or amalgamate.
Yeah, well said. Well said. That's very well said. As we approach the end of the show, Tim, I always like to ask the guests what are their top 3 branding insights. You might not have 3, you might only have 1 or 2, but if you've got more, then happy to share. You mentioned one already. I have to say that what you do is at the very heart of what we do as well. Every time you put out a piece of content, you're putting out a piece of branding. So it's very important that you identify what it is that you're trying to communicate, how you're doing that. But I'm kind of stepping on you here a little bit. That's kind of my number one thing that's out there. What do you think? What are your top 3, mate?
Yeah. So the first one, we hear the phrase perception is reality, but the flip that I've found to that is your customer's perception is your reality. So you might think your business is great and wonderful, but the perception that your customer has is the reality that you live in. So every time that you have an opportunity to get feedback from a customer, or every time that someone mentions something about, okay, so maybe I didn't like that delivery, it doesn't matter what you think about your business. It's what the customer thinks about your business is the reality that you play in. So that's the first one. The second one, is probably that tip. Every business should go and look through their profile and ask that question: would I buy from myself, or would I at least be interested in seeing another video? And then the second one, or the last sort of branding insight is often than not, some content out there is better than no content. So we're in an age where sometimes you can look down on the selfie video, but if the selfie video is the only thing that you can do, don't be afraid to do that, because you're not going to get to your 100th bit of content that is amazing that people like until you put out that first bit of content. We overthink that too much. So when it comes to your brand, is built on every little thing that you do when you put out, and it's built over time. It's not built from day one. So that'll be the three tips that that I would give about branding.
Yeah, beautifully articulated as well. Just as a small sidebar for the audience, I've been working on another tool in the back end of Einstein, and I want to invite everybody to come on over to brand-scientist.com and check out Einstein, where we've created the tool, the avatar, Einstein, to optimize more than 120 different items within your business through the lens of branding. And one of the things that I've been working on in the last 24 hours, which will go up into the website with Einstein, and I'll put the videos out in the next day or so, is about customer perception. It's exactly about that. And one of the things that I was figuring out doing as an advertising guy, I've been working in advertising for a long time, right, is trying to figure out how it is that I'm representing myself to my customers. So I have this idea, this perception, and what I came up with was this idea. I can write down 5 or 6 things that I'm trying to represent. So what is my homepage on my website trying to articulate. Then I've created the AI tool using the large language model and Einstein to ask Einstein exactly what it is that I'm representing, because the large language model is far more sophisticated than my brain box. And how is it that I'm trying to make somebody feel? What is it that I'm trying to get them to do? And then what I can do is that I can apply that same formula to my competitor's website. So I can take their URL, use these command prompts, overlay it onto their website and say, what are they trying to say? Who are they trying to approach? And who are they targeting? And how are they trying to make me feel? Because ultimately, you're going to make a purchase on how you feel. So I've created a tool, some command prompts, and some custom instructions that enable you to figure out what the customer perception is. So the large language model is the customer, and they're telling you what they're perceiving from what it is. So I encourage everybody to come on over to brand-scientist.com. Check out Einstein over there. It's just $18.95 a month. It's very, very cheap. It's cost effective. You can optimize more than 120 different aspects of your business. And there's a whole lot of bonus content in there as well. And that goes to the very heart of your number one branding tip. Tim, thank you so much for sharing that.
I love that. That was a good. That worked perfectly. We didn't plan that. That was.
It was a segue that landed in there.
Yeah, that was chuffed. That's cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as we round out the podcast today, Tim, if people want to connect with you, what would be the best way over at your website?
Yeah, website beanfilming.com.au, and then LinkedIn is actually where I'm most active. I will just end. LinkedIn is probably the biggest opportunity when it comes to creating content right now. I'm going to go and listen to your episode that you had with the LinkedIn specialist because, there's some great stuff going on over there. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, connect with me. It's a big opportunity. So, but yeah, those would be the two places. Would be LinkedIn and then the website. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. It's been an
absolute
awesome
pleasure.
Ladies and
gentlemen, as always, all of the links from today's show can be found in the description below. Make sure you reach out to Tim on his LinkedIn. Make sure you head on over to his website. Go and watch him shaking his booty on TikTok as well. It's kind of funny. I didn't look. Go over to William's site and get naked with him or something like that. I don't know. Round out the podcast today. Something like that. All right, let's pack it up, gentlemen. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time. It's bye for now.